Remember when Ben Shapiro went to this podcast convention and he took pictures with people? He was very respectful and they took pictures. And then the podcast host had to apologize that he went. We apologized. Ben Shapiro showed up briefly and he wasn't registered. We didn't expect him, but we take full responsibility for the harm done by his presence. By the way, did you know that convention has since apologized to Ben Shapiro? Did you know that, Jackson?
No.
Yeah, which means whoever was running their Twitter account was going off-road. They were being rogue. But that's how scary basic... That's how scary a basic bitch conservative nerd is now to some people. And I don't know why they're constantly trying to make Ben Shapiro into some edgy bad boy. Makes me feel like a real alpha male tough guy UFC fighter. It's a slippery slope how young... This is a real thing, article. How young men fall into online radicalization. Reed Brown, the subtitle says... Reed Brown says YouTube started showing him problematic content when he was 13. Why would YouTube do that? Why doesn't he just go on Pornhub and see dildos the size of a horse's leg being jammed up teenagers? Why doesn't he just do that? It's YouTube that's bad. So again, this is establishment corporate news media afraid of news media that's independent on YouTube, and they try to pretend they want to get rid of it and they want to censor it because they don't want the competition. That's all this is. And then they try to make it look like it's scary out there on YouTube. People are being radicalized. That's what this is. Hey, good news, CBC. If Ben Shapiro is the gateway to toxic masculinity, all masculinity is officially dead in this world.
Wait, is that what they say in this article? They argue that he's like a toxic masculine male or something?
Yeah, well, how young men fall into online radicalization. Hey, by the way, I want to show you, this is a funny video someone made about Ben Shapiro. Watch this.
Whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house.
I said certified freak. 7 days a week. Wet ass P word. Make that pull-out game weak. Yeah, you effing with some wet ass P word. Bring a bucket and a mop for this wet ass P word. Give me everything you've got for this wet ass P word. Beat it up, N word, catch a charge. Extra large and extra hard. Put this P word right in your face. Swipe your nose like a credit card. Hop on top if I want to ride. I do a Hinkle while it's inside. Spit in my mouth, look in my eyes. This P word is wet. Come take a dive. It continues along these lines. And it gets significantly more vulgar. Like a lot more vulgar.
That's the guy they're saying is radicalizing young boys. That's the guy who's radicalized. The guy who's offended at rap lyrics is somehow radicalizing young boys on YouTube. That's kind of ironic, no?
Yes.
Not since Dan Quayle recited the lyrics to Cop Killer have I been so chilled to the bone. Reed Brown, this is their big story. Reed Brown remembers the first time he got sucked in by the algorithm. He was just 13. Watching videos after school when YouTube started pushing him to controversial content. YouTube took him by the hand. As time went on, the videos became increasingly extreme, says Brown. He's now 21. Jesus Christ. What did he see that was so controversial in content? What did he see? I'm almost afraid to keep reading because I don't want to be radicalized myself. It started out pretty benign, he recalls. You're watching something about teen fashion, and then the next thing you know, the algorithm would push you to a Ben Shapiro video. No! How can he fall so far so fast? A Ben Shapiro video. Though Shapiro describes himself as a conservative political commentator, his views are controversial, and some are outright discriminatory. He suggested, for example, that transgender people suffer from a mental disorder. Well, doesn't that sound like a basic conservative thing to say? So is all conservatism now extremism? Because that's what they're saying. That's a fastball down the middle conservative idea. That's transgender people suffer from a mental. Am I wrong about that, Jackson?
You're not wrong about that.
So they're just saying half the country is a controversial extreme, right?
Yeah.
Also, I was not aware that gender dysphoria is not considered a mental disorder. It's called dysphoria, right? Does that not mean that? If it's not a disorder, wouldn't it be called gender euphoria? They call it gender dysphoria.
I don't know about these definitions, but all I can say is that teacher in Canada with the massive tits was very mentally stable. I would never say that she was not mentally stable.
Regardless of what people think about Ben Shapiro and his views of trans people, less than 10 years ago, the entire psychiatric community was labeling transgenderism a disorder. There it is. Gender dysphoria, the distress a person experiences due to the mismatch between their gender identity, their personal sense of their own gender, and their sex assigned at birth. This diagnostic label, gender identity disorder, was used until 2013. This condition was renamed to remove the stigma associated with the term disorder. So they no longer call it that, I guess.
Because of a stigma.
Because of the stigma. I thought mental disorders shouldn't be stigmatized, right? If it's a stigma to refer to something as a disorder, doesn't that reinforce the negative stigmas around mental disorders? Also, this just sounds like semantics and not, this is semantics.
Yes.
This is not extremism. This is all they got for Ben Shapiro? But he has a combined 9.4 million subscribers. Oh, so that's what it is. You become an extremist when you have a following that's really big. Many of his followers are young people.
Ha!
Why don't they just watch cartoons and be told that nuclear war is a good thing for democracy and eat more sugar cereal? A lot of his followers are young. Just like Brown was when he got pushed in Shapiro's direction. Oh, they keep pushing. While Shapiro is not affiliated with any hate group, he's not. Experts in the media, experts. Do you know who experts in the media are? Guys like Brian Stelter. That's who they consider an expert in the media. Nina Jankowicz. Taylor Lorenz. Those are the people they consider experts in the media. So those fucking freakheads in the media... While Shapiro is not affiliated with any hate group, experts in media, gender studies, and the radicalization of young men... God damn. Jesus Christ. That they say his content is prevalent in online extremist communities. So experts in the media and gender studies people who are experts in radicalization of young men, they say his comments are everywhere. What? So? By the way, which experts? They don't tell you which experts. Which gender studies people? Jesus. And the exposure to controversial and increasing harmful views about masculinity. Yeah. The objectification of women and the LGBT community has these same experts raising concern about how extremist far-right groups are using TikTok, YouTube, and other social media apps in a drip campaign to slowly radicalize vulnerable teens and young men. My God, Andrew Tate was objectifying women on TikTok, of all places. I hope no perverts were radicalized by his extremism while scrolling through the rampant underage sexual content. Hey, are these experts at all familiar with what's on TikTok? Because if you're actually concerned with vulnerable teens, you should probably outright ban TikTok. Though TikTok's decision to remove influencer Andrew Tate's account for misogynistic content, the company said violated its policies, put the discussion in the spotlight. The personal stories of people like Brown offer unique insight into the effect the content can have on teen boys.
And again, Tate wasn't censored off the internet until his name was more Google searched than Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
Yep. The videos Brown watched as an early teen were often misogynistic. He said. And it started to affect the way he thought and how he interacted with people at school. Oh, good. Finally, we're going to hear some specifics. Okay, let's see what extremist malarkey this young man is up to. I remember repeating some sexist attitudes. That's a fucking Jesus fucking Christ. Jesus fucking Christ. This is real. This is real. I remember repeating some sexist attitudes. Things about the wage gap. We can't let kids get the wrong idea about the wage gap. We've lost them if they have the wrong idea about the wage gap. Jesus Christ. Especially when I was hanging out with my guy friends. We were repeating all these things we were seeing on the internet. A lot of sexism and misogyny. Jesus Christ. Him and his hoodlum friends get together and start repeating sexist attitudes, and then they said something about the wage gap.
A lot of bad dudes. Him and Corn Pop.
A documentary and podcast producer who researches online radicalization among young men and incel subculture. This person, Ellen Bateman, she describes radicalization as a slippery slope that begin as algorithms pushing boys to videos that's increasingly harmful. Holy shit. You know, I think we all owe the makers of Reefer Madness an apology. And I commend them for the restraint and lack of sensationalism when put up against this shit. By the way, this is from the Washington Post. You know the wage gap? They call it misleading. Here's the facts behind the 79-cent pay wage gap factoid. And every year since 2012, the Washington Post, their fact checker, has offered an explanation of this figure and why it's misleading. They give it 2 Pinocchios, the wage gap. They give it 2 Pinocchios. But according to this article, that's radical. You're radicalizing young boys. That was the first example that guy gave. Was the wage gap, and here it is bullshit from the I'm not saying it is real, I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying the Washington fucking Post fact checker, the Jeff Bezos shitlib rag, the Washington Post, goes against the wage gap. Are you going to tell people not to read the Washington Post? Because it's going to radicalize young boys. Now, a young boy's going to read the Washington Post, and he's going to go out and start saying stuff about the wage gap that's misogynistic. Because he read the Washington Post. Then someone might engage you in a comment thread and tell you to join their Discord group where the content gets darker and darker and it's edgy, she said. It's entertaining for some young guys, and before you know it, you've stumbled into an extremist subculture. They got a target to blame all their problems on. The allure of these hate groups is that they provide isolated young men with a sense of community and power, often for the first time in their lives, and give them a target, someone to blame for their challenges they perceive in their lives. You mean like what you guys are doing? How you guys are blaming YouTube for all your problems? Jesus Christ. A target to blame their problems on. A target to blame their problems on. You mean like, I don't know, like the patriarchy for incels? Gasp. Some young men may also see messages of empowerment for women and girls as an attack on masculinity, says Joanne Schrader, a writer whose work focuses on gender and media representation. I bet that she's a great writer. I bet she writes fantastically. Oh, my God. Maybe they see... So what you're saying... So she goes on, maybe they see Me Too stuff. Maybe they see a t-shirt or a bumper sticker that says the future is female. There are a lot of encouraging content out there for girls. And if young men aren't given an opportunity to talk through their feelings on this, they may see that as men are irrelevant. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what's happening, but they may feel that way. So you're saying that young men see these goofy, outright hostile messages directed at them, and then they find a sense of community and not liking that together? Wow, you are an expert. Bateman and Schrader both agree that role models are critical to the healthy development of young men. They say it's important that parents are talking with their kids about the kind of content they consume online. While parents can't get ahead of all the technology their teens might use, Schrader said they can offer help by teaching them media literacy and do it early on. Let me tell you, babies are more literate than their media literate than their parents. You ever see a baby with a fucking iPhone? You want to have an adult teach a kid about media literacy? Jesus Christ. We start doing media critique with them when they're quite young. Holy shit. So they have the skill to analyze something when it's put in front of them. As for Brown, he's now a fourth-year mechanical engineering student at Dalhousie University. He said he was able to avoid being pulled into more extreme content by using social media less often and instead reading literature. You mean he was able to handle it? You mean he was able to make up his own goddamn mind?
I think he's probably a nerd with no friends, and he's a weirdo. Listen to the way he talks. He's like, he thinks that talking about the pay gap is misogynistic. He doesn't know what misogynistic is if he thinks that's misogynistic. You know, they talk about this being like a radical content pipeline. The radical content pipeline we have is what is leading kids and parents down to the mental state of thinking that it's normal to have hypersexualized teenagers on TikTok shaking their ass in front of the camera, or going to your middle school class and having a woman with like 50-pound tits walk out, fake tits walk out, and think everything's normal. Like that's the radical pipeline we're on. The extremist ideas is the woke ideology. That's what's extreme right now.
It is pro-censorship. The extremists are really the pro-censorship people to me. And
it always censors in that direction, though.
And that's right. And so these are the radicals, people who are pro-censorship, trying to convince you the people they want to censor are the radicals. That's what's happening here.
And Ben Shapiro, he's like the most establishment hack on the planet. He works with Dennis Prager. I heard him last week. He said, if you don't actively support Israel as a Zionist, then you're unpatriotic as an American. Like it's not more mainstream U.S. politics than that. Ben
Shapiro is going to tell you to don't have sex before you get married and go to church. That's who Ben Shapiro is.
Literally.
Jesus. I mean, he's got a bunch of right-wing ideology. He's against, government, Medicare for all, stuff like all the stuff I'm for. He's against. He's probably for the Ukraine war. I don't know. I shouldn't say anything, but
he's like an establishment Republican.
Yeah, he's just an establishment Republican who I disagree with on most things. Virginia Beach, Richmond, Arlington, San Jose, Miami, West Palm Beach. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets and become a premium member while you're there.